town of Riverbend lay in ruins, shrouded in smoke and ash as the dawn broke over a barren landscape. Just the day before, this quiet, tight-knit community had been alive with children's laughter echoing through the streets and neighbors exchanging smiles over fences. Now, the air was heavy with the acrid smell of smoke, and the streets were silent, save for the faint cries of families searching desperately through the wreckage for something, anything, to hold on to. From his opulent mansion perched high on the hill, Senator Marcus Langford gazed down at the devastation with detached amusement. His silver hair and perfectly tailored suit, untouched by the chaos, stood in cruel contrast to the soot-streaked faces of families combing through the ashes below. With a slight smirk curling at the corners of his lips, he watched the flames dance across the remnants of lives he had knowingly sacrificed for profit. This was no act of nature. The fire had been sparked by power lines so outdated that they'd been flagged for replacement years ago. Reports had warned of imminent disaster, but Langford had blocked legislation that would have mandated costly safety upgrades. In return, he'd received generous campaign contributions from Eastland Energy Corporation, the company responsible for maintaining the infrastructure. Natural disasters are unpredictable, Langford had told reporters just months earlier, brushing aside concerns about aging power grids. We can't anticipate every possibility. But he had anticipated this. In the days following the fire, emails leaked to the press revealed that Langford had not only ignored the risks, but had actively conspired with Eastland Energy to delay upgrades. Shell companies tied to Langford had already begun purchasing devalued properties in the area, poised to profit from the loss of hundreds of homes. As morning broke over Riverbend, families picked through the ashes, searching for anything salvageable. In the center of it all, a young girl clung to a soot-covered teddy bear, her tears streaking lines through the ash on her face. Langford's smirk deepened. For him, this was not a tragedy, it was an opportunity, a meticulously planned one. While the town of Riverbend mourned and struggled to pick up the pieces, one man quietly prepared for the fight to bring justice: Judge Ethan Cross. He was no stranger to adversity. Born into a working-class family, Ethan grew up believing that justice was not a privilege reserved for the wealthy or powerful, but a fundamental right for everyone. Known as the Torch, Ethan had built a reputation as a judge who illuminated the darkest corners of corruption. For him, the truth was something that could not remain hidden forever, no matter how deeply it was buried under layers of deceit. This time, his target was none other than Senator Marcus Langford. Before the class action lawsuit from the people of Riverbend officially began, Ethan had quietly investigated the financial ties between Langford and Eastland Energy Corporation. The evidence he uncovered was irrefutable. Large sums of money from Eastland had been funneled into Langford's personal accounts under the guise of political contributions. Internal emails revealed that Langford had ordered the blocking of infrastructure upgrade bills to protect the company's shareholder profits. Ethan knew this would be a tough battle. To make Langford aware that he was onto him, Ethan sent a subtle message during a social event. "The truth always finds its way to the surface, Senator. I hope you're prepared to answer some tough questions." Langford, ever self-assured, simply took a sip of his drink and replied with a smug grin. "I've weathered worse storms than you can imagine, Judge Cross. A few papers won't change a thing." Langford walked away, confident that his influence and power would shield him as they always had. What he didn't realize was that his overconfidence would prove to be his fatal flaw. Ethan, on the other hand, was more determined than ever. He knew that integrity and courage would be his strongest weapons in this fight against Langford's corruption. In Riverbend, as smoldering ashes continued to linger, families faced more than just the physical destruction of their homes. They confronted the bitter truth that the system meant to protect them had failed. The stories of the townspeople were not only about material loss, but also a cry against injustice. Claire Watson, a single mother, stood amidst the charred remains of what had once been her safe haven. Her 8-year-old daughter Emma clung tightly to a charred teddy bear, its singed fur a painful reminder of the life they had lost. Tears streamed down Claire's face as she told reporters, her voice trembling with grief and anger. "We called dozens of times to report the damaged power lines. They told us there was no budget. Now, everything we've worked for is gone." Nearby, James O'Connor, a retired firefighter, helped neighbors sift through debris. He recounted the horrifying scene as the flames engulfed the town. "I've fought fires for 30 years, but I've never seen anything like this. The fire spread so fast, no one had a chance to react." Adding insult to injury, insurance companies began denying claims, labeling the disaster an act of God. Anger grew as leaked emails revealed that Marcus Langford had received significant funds from Eastland Energy just days after blocking a critical safety bill. At a community meeting, dozens of residents stood up, sharing their anguish. An elderly man, his voice breaking, said, "I've lived here for 40 years. Losing my home hurts, but knowing this could have been prevented is what really breaks me." Amid the grief and outrage, a glimmer of hope emerged: Judge Ethan Cross. To the people of Riverbend, he was more than just a judge. He was a symbol of their belief that the truth would prevail, no matter the odds. The opening day of the Riverbend trial drew the attention of the entire town. The courtroom was packed to capacity, with local residents filling every available seat, their eyes filled with anticipation and hope. Judge Ethan Cross, calm and composed as always, presided over the proceedings, ready to take on the intense legal battle ahead. The plaintiff's attorney, Rebecca Hayes, began with a powerful statement. "Today, we are not just seeking justice for the families who lost everything. We are here to expose the greed and negligence of those in power. This was not a natural disaster. It was a disaster born of corruption and recklessness." The defense, led by Langford's high-profile legal team, wasted no time in striking back. Lead counsel David Porter asserted, "This tragedy, while heartbreaking, was the result of unforeseen weather conditions that no one could have predicted or prevented." Tension in the courtroom escalated as witnesses took the stand. Rachel Monroe, a former employee of Eastland Energy, was among the first to testify. Her face betrayed her nerves, but her voice remained steady. "I submitted more than 20 reports warning that the power lines in this area were on the brink of failure. Every time, we were instructed to ignore or delay action." Rachel presented internal emails exposing how Langford and Eastland's executives had deliberately buried safety reports. The evidence left the courtroom in stunned silence, while Langford sat motionless, a faint smirk fading from his face. Judge Ethan Cross faced pressure of his own. Langford's allies sent veiled threats, ranging from cryptic messages to direct warnings. Yet Ethan stood firm, declaring with resolute authority, "Justice cannot be bought. This court will not be swayed by any outside pressure." As the first day concluded, the air in the courtroom was thick with determination. The residents of Riverbend understood that this was only the beginning of a long fight. But with Ethan Cross at the helm, they had reason to believe justice would prevail. Rachel Monroe, the brave whistleblower at the heart of the case, had become the trial's most pivotal witness. The undeniable evidence she brought forth had shaken Marcus Langford's entire corrupt network. But truth always came with risks. Shortly after her first day of testimony, Rachel began receiving anonymous threats. "Stay silent or you'll regret it." Not long after, a suspicious car parked outside her house, following her every move. Fear gripped her, but Rachel refused to back down. Judge Ethan Cross, fully aware of the danger, ordered police protection for Rachel. Meeting with her privately in his chambers, he reassured her, "Rachel, I know you're scared, but your courage could save an entire community. I won't let you face this alone." Rachel nodded, tears streaming down her face, but her resolve unwavering. "If I don't speak up, who will?" In court, Rachel continued her testimony despite relentless pressure from Langford's legal team. She presented internal documents, including emails where Langford explicitly ordered delays in power line repairs to protect corporate profits. These documents weren't just allegations, they were direct proof of the collusion between Langford and Eastland Energy. Langford's lead attorney, David Porter, tried to rattle her with accusations. Are you doing this because you were fired? Isn't this just a personal vendetta? Rachel calmly replied, I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing it for everyone who lost their homes, their lives, because Mr. Langford chose profit over people. Her words left the courtroom in silence. Some residents in attendance couldn't hold back tears, while Langford sat frozen, his face tightening with each revelation. Outside the courthouse, despite the looming threats, Rachel became a symbol of hope and courage, a testament to the idea that truth was always worth fighting for. On the third day of the trial, tension in the courtroom reached a boiling point as Michael Foster, a former aide to Marcus Langford, was called to the stand. With exhaustion etched on his face but determination in his voice, Michael began to expose the secrets Langford had worked so hard to keep hidden. On June 15th of last year, Michael testified, Senator Langford received the final safety report about the hazardous state of the power lines in Riverbend. I personally handed him the document. Instead of acting, he laughed and said, property values there could use a good slash and burn. The courtroom fell silent before a wave of murmurs swept through the audience. Michael continued. Shortly after, he made calls to the CEO of Eastland Energy and several insurance companies. They strategized how to profit from the disaster before it even happened. Langford sat stiffly at the defense table, his self-assured demeanor beginning to crack. As the plaintiff's attorney presented evidence, including emails, financial records, and recordings of secret meetings, the truth became undeniable. Unable to contain himself, Langford suddenly stood and shouted, You're all fools if you believe this. You have no idea how the world really works. Judge Ethan Cross pounded his gavel firmly, his voice sharp. Senator Langford, one more outburst and you will be removed from this courtroom. Langford refused to relent, turning to yell at the judge. Who do you think you are, a small-town judge who thinks he can judge me? I've bought and sold people like you. Ethan remained composed, instructing court officers to escort Langford out of the courtroom. Other witnesses, including former employees of Eastland Energy, continued to expose Langford's corruption. Robert Martinez, a former vice president at the company, testified, We knew the infrastructure was failing, but Langford promised to block any safety inspections. In return, our company funneled payments to his offshore accounts. Langford's narrative was now completely unraveled. As the day's proceedings ended, the residents of Riverbend left the courtroom feeling a sense of relief. For the first time, justice felt within reach. The final day of sentencing had arrived. The courtroom was packed, not only with Riverbend residents, but also with reporters and people from neighboring towns, all eager to witness the outcome of this arduous legal battle. Judge Ethan Cross entered the courtroom with a solemn expression. He glanced at the residents of Riverbend, who had stood resolutely in their fight for justice. Speaking with deliberate and commanding authority, he began, Senator Marcus Langford, your actions have caused irreparable harm. You ignored warnings, exploited the suffering of the people, and used their pain as a means to enrich yourself. Justice does not favor men like you. After a moment of silence, he delivered the sentence. The court finds Marcus Langford guilty of conspiracy, insurance fraud, and willful endangerment of the community. The total sentence is 35 years in prison. Furthermore, you are ordered to pay full restitution to the victims of the Riverbend fire. The courtroom erupted in cheers and tears of relief. Langford, unable to control himself, shouted, You'd all regret this. I'll come back and destroy every one of you. Ethan slammed his gavel down firmly, ordering court officers to escort Langford out. As the senator was led away in handcuffs, his threats were now nothing more than the empty cries of a man stripped of power. Outside the courtroom, the residents of Riverbend embraced one another, tears of pain mingling with hope for a new beginning. Claire Watson smiled brightly as she spoke to her daughter Emma. We can start over from here. Justice has been served. Rachel Monroe, the brave whistleblower, was surrounded by residents, thanking her for her courage. She replied, This isn't just my victory. This is our victory, the victory of truth. As for Judge Ethan Cross, he declined any thanks. He simply gave a faint smile, watching as the people began their journey of rebuilding. To him, this wasn't just a trial. It was proof that justice, no matter how difficult, could be achieved. Months after the trial, Riverbend began to rise from the ashes. New homes with enhanced safety systems stood as symbols of rebirth and hope. But the lessons of the fire went far beyond rebuilding structures. It underscored the importance of responsibility and justice, not just within the community, but in the larger system as well. Judge Ethan Cross, speaking at the opening ceremony of the new community center, emphasized, responsibility isn't just an individual concept. It is a commitment by the entire system, from leaders to every resident, to protect and support one another. Justice isn't just about holding wrongdoers accountable. It's about ensuring that tragedies like this never happen again. The residents of Riverbend not only rebuilt their homes, but also restored faith in their community. Rachel Monroe, the brave whistleblower, opened a support center for those willing to stand up against wrongdoing. Speaking at its inauguration, she said, "If we stay silent, injustice continues, but if we speak up together, we can change an entire system." Riverbend's story echoed far beyond the borders of the small town. Inspired by their victory, other communities began demanding greater transparency from corporations and local governments. In his chambers, Ethan Cross placed a small statue of a torch inscribed with the words, "Justice is the guiding light." To him, the case wasn't just a legal victory, but a reminder that justice must always be paired with responsibility. Addressing a group of visiting law students, he shared, "Remember, justice isn't just about punishment. It's about ensuring we learn from tragedy. It's a commitment to always do what's right, even when it's the hardest thing to do." Outside, the children of Riverbend played on lush green lawns, their kites soaring high in the clear blue sky. Families who had once lost everything now had the chance to start anew. They weren't just rebuilding houses. They were rebuilding trust in one another. The story of Riverbend became a symbol of resilience, courage, and the importance of safeguarding justice. Every brick laid in the new home stood as a testament that when a community unites and stands firm in the truth, nothing is impossible.